I'm the CRM Ninja, and I have to say it's a great honor to have the guest on my show tonight, because I think that he has almost single-handedly, with the help of others, enabled people to do more with CRM and get around the native CRM and Dynamics 365 abilities to do stuff, or rather not to do stuff. So I'd therefore like to welcome Jonas Rapp, XrmToolBox.
Yeah, flattering always works, so keep it up.
I'll do my best. I have to say, I find it actually quite ironic, because last night I was doing a deployment to a client at 1:30 in the morning, because I had to be out of business hours and stuff, and I was busy with other things first. And I got to the point where I had to update some records, but they were closed.
Oh.
And I was thinking, how can I update these? I don't want to create a workflow at 1:30 in the morning.
Who are you going to call?
How am I going to kind of thought, hold on, there's this thing, it's got a big X, a small R, a small M, XrmToolBox, and I have to tell you 5 minutes later, it was done.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
But, yeah, I need to say this. I often say this before you get too carried away. The XrmToolBox is originally by, or not originally, it is by Tanguy Toussaint,
right.
French MVP since, I think, Stone Age sometime. And he created a toolbox. I just created a few tools, but he's created like a gazillion of tools and the toolbox itself. So.
It's amazing, because I first came across the XrmToolBox probably 5-6 years ago, and I remember, there was a list of tools. It was about, I don't know, 10, 15 tools in there or so at the time. And you load it up now, and the list just scrolls on and on and on.
Yeah. And some are better than others, yes. So
that is true.
It's a lot of tools, but I mean that's also part of the success of the XrmToolBox. It's so easy to create your own tools, so you can create it for internal use, and you realize, okay, this might be good for someone else to use as well, and you might as well create an XrmToolBox tool instead of just creating a one-off console application or something. So, yeah,
indeed,
that's a huge part of the success story there.
It did, and I mean, it feeds back into what we're so passionate about, which is community. People can develop stuff, can release it, so other people can use it, and it helps them out.
Absolutely. I mean, the collaboration is what makes it fun, really.
It is. So, my picture in my background is a sailboat, and the reason is I understand that you have a passion or an interest in sailing. Can you tell us some more about it?
Well, I grew up on a wooden 8-meter boat that actually took part in the Swedish Navy in the Second World War. So
you grew up on a boat?
No. I mean, all summers we went out with a boat. It wasn't sailing, because I mean it was not a sailing boat. It had a mast, and you could put up a sail if the engine and all else failed. So we did sail when the weather was fine and there was no wind. Then you can sail. But yeah, so I was always been in the archipelago in Stockholm and also around other parts of Sweden. So yeah, I mean, growing up in Stockholm, for many it becomes a natural part of the sort of inheritance from the parents and so on. So yeah, I've done that, and nowadays, I mean, the old wooden boat actually died on us only a couple of years ago.
Oh.
I think like 3 years before her 100th anniversary. So now we got a comfy sailing boat, plastic. You just polish a bit in the spring and put it in the water, and rinse it off in the fall when you take it up. Instead of a wooden boat has its work with it associated with that. So,
yes, obviously a lot more care needs to be taken for wooden boats. I know somebody who had a canal boat here in London and took it around, and yes, had to be scrubbed and all the rest of it, and I don't know all the technical terms for it, but yes, I had to have a lot of maintenance done on a yearly basis to make sure that everything was okay.
And given the summer we have ahead of us now, it feels kind of good to have a way to have vacation without going anywhere far, without needing to fly anywhere or so on. So
yes,
I'm guessing our archipelago in Stockholm and basically everywhere will be crammed with boats this year.
Well, I guess, yes, that is very true. And obviously being a boat, social distancing comes in as part of it. You just keep the boats slightly further apart.
Exactly.
You can always pretend that they're pirates. You need to repel borders and use poles and something to poke other people off.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Just a thought.
Raise the flag with the skull on and everything. Yeah.
It's always amusing what comes out of these sort of conversations. and the random thoughts that pop into my head.
Yeah. Don't talk about all of them, though.
Oh, no. Wouldn't talk about all of them. No, we know better than that.
Yeah.
Usually. That's safe for when everybody meets up in person at events, which obviously isn't happening at the moment. But yes, and then you have the events, the user groups and summits and all the rest of it. And then you go out for drinks afterwards, and all exciting things come out then.
Yes. Strictly NDA, of course.
No, yes, under NDA. Although I can mention that when John Levesque was in the UK recently for Scottish Summit a few months back, so he came into London for a couple of days. I met up with him on the first night and ended up with a party of Vikings.
Oh.
So I'm allowed to say that because it was splashed all over social media and stuff, and John Levesque doesn't mind these sort of things. So
that
yes,
usually happens. It gets splashed over social media, whether you like it or not.
Yes, there can be some quite handy little gadgets actually in which you can block mobile phone signals, but we won't talk about those sort of things. No. So, what do you have to share with us for the Oops Factor?
Oh, the Oops Factor. I was thinking a bit about this, not because it's hard to find anything, but because it's hard to pick from the sort of flood of oopses that have happened over the years. No, I think my Oops Factor for this episode is plugin recursion from hell.
Ooh, plugins.
Yeah, well, we had a bunch of years ago, we're going into a project and we knew that this was going to be quite heavy on the business logic side, which means quite a few plugins were going to have to be written. And at the same time, we wanted this to sort of be able to harvest this IP for other customers afterwards. So we went into the project with the approach that this will need to be able to move around a bit. So not writing this kind of business logic in one big chunk and this is how it works and it works perfectly for that customer, but we'd rather want to be able to sort of twist the knobs and to change the behavior a bit. So a lot of configurability there.
A sort of adaptable framework you could then take and apply to the next project with a bit of tweaking.
Yeah, exactly. So one vertical solution that we created and want to be able to reuse for other customers within the business industry.
Okay.
And that was all good. And you start building the project, and we had the approach that since we want this plug and play configurable style of the development, we created quite atomic plugin class, meaning if we should validate the social security number, we do that in one plugin, and then we should validate the zip code, and we do that in another plugin, and then we should...
Right. One plugin for a single use, single purpose.
Exactly. So that we could easily extract that one. They don't care about social security number.
You can just take that out. Got it.
Or even just with some configuration, change the behavior of the plugins. And that's all well. I really like it's sort of a puristic approach there. One thing does what it's responsible for and nothing else.
Correct.
But this also meant that one thing would trigger another thing. So, we've all seen, it could be aggregating or cascading plugins that you change something here, which creates a log record, or it creates an event or some kind, which triggers another plugin, and so on.
Domino effect.
The domino effect, yes. And it's intentional. We want it to behave that way. And we want the responsibility to validate that when a contact is created, that everything is validated. It should be residing within that plugin, responsible for the validation. So it's a separation of responsibility. But when an account is created and you automatically create a primary contact or whatever your scenario might be, that will, of course, trigger the contact validation.
Yes.
But it also means as this grows over time, and we realize there are more and more dependencies like this, you could sort of, you touch the system once, and then it's then you hit a 2-minute timeout, and because plugins are firing and triggering each other, and of course need to make sure that we don't actually have the recursion. But still, it could create ripples within the whole execution pipeline. So it goes on forever. It could be performance issues, and it could lead to actually, when you find yourself in this situation, I just want to create a freaking contact. Why does it have to validate it as if I'm creating the Satya, he needs proper validation. Or I mean,
Yeah.
so you lock yourself in a box of excellent, perfectly functioning business logic.
Yes, from the conceptual point of view, it's an
Combined,
absolute perfect system.
yeah,
But from a user point of view, they can't really do what they need to do because everything's taking that much time.
yeah. And from a purely practical performance perspective as well, it doesn't hold up. I mean,
Was
you would
this
want that.
on-prem or cloud, this project?
That was back on premise. So,
Okay.
I mean, we could turn up, put some more memory in there or whatever. You can back down. But I mean, we used it for online as well. So, and then you have some other types of constraints on the execution times. And stuff. But yeah, and then you finally realize, okay, we might need to consolidate a few of these plugins. We might want to put the social security number and zip code validation in the same plugin instead.
Right.
And then you start picking your, okay, let's lift this plugin. What does that do? It does this. Okay, if we exclude that from the, remove the plugin step, so it doesn't trigger anymore.
Yeah.
Now what happens? And then something starts happening over there instead. So, I mean, the spider web of intertangled plugin executions you have there, that's when you go running for the next job.
Can you output all of the interactions into a nice little Visio diagram?
No. Oh, I have yearned and longed for that for all my years in this business. Because I find that is actually something that I find so hard to sort of see the flow chart as it's implemented. And when we include plugins, workflows, is something happening from the UI JavaScript even, or I mean, sort of getting the thread, the tree of events that's happening from originating from one event.
By the way, but budding developers out there, if you've got some free time on your hands, is the concept to get it into the XrmToolBox. Just saying, you know.
I will gladly give a free lesson on how to create an XrmToolBox tool. Then someone
if Jonas gets this, right.
Yes,
Got it.
Yes, absolutely. So that's my hook factor. But the problem for me, I like things being pure. You know what is being put in which box and so on. Where are the responsibilities for the business logic? I like the idea, but you still come to a point where it's not feasible anymore. It becomes too much of a tangled spider web there.
Look, I remember a project I was on some years back. We came up with a absolutely brilliant data model. Everything was held in its own entity. Each data type was its own entity. You weren't crossing over it. It had its field specific to it, and it was pure. It was absolutely perfect. The problem was when we implemented it, we had some logic checking things, and it was going off to a processing engine. Mm-hmm. And every time a record would create, it would be updated, it would fire, it would then be sent off, process, come back, and its other things are still processing. And when we actually put this into a proper test system, it didn't work. Users were sitting there and there were errors because later data was coming back before earlier data, because it was all async and stuff. So yes, conceptual is great, but sometimes it doesn't work with the actual practicality.
Yeah, and that's also one part I think of the spider web we ended up with. That the customer expressed the need everything has to be, or almost everything had to be synchronous, because when they created something, they needed to see the effect of that immediately.
Wow.
Which meant, of course, then you need it synchronous, and you need all these things to happen. Just sit and wait then.
Yeah.
Then you have to sit and wait. And so
that's called an enforced coffee break.
Yes. Unfortunately, the server doesn't allow very long coffee breaks.
Yes.
So you get a timeout. And so that's also part of sort of making it difficult for us. And having to do it synchronous.
Yeah, very true. And
I mean, you get the benefit then of being able to actually roll back if something blows up during that synchronous processing.
Correct.
Doing it asynchronous, then you're sort of fire and forget and hope it works.
Well, we don't know how long we'll still have synchronous around. I mean, I've heard rumors out there that the ability to run things synchronously is going to be removed at some point. How true that is, I have no idea, but it's interesting that a couple of people have mentioned it.
Yeah, I think, well, they started trying to force us to accept it by saying flow is the new thing, or automate flows, and classic workflows are going out. And okay, so when is our automate getting synchronous? Yeah, we'll see. So, I mean, everything we automate should be asynchronous now, or is that the reasoning behind it, or is it just really, really, really hard to make it synchronous?
Yeah. Who knows? And you know, there are performance hits, and you know, especially if you have a lot of people using the systems, even cloud systems, you know, you don't want all of them suddenly hitting that off and spiking and taking down data centers.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. No, so thank you. That's really valuable. As you know, when planning the system, again, concept is great, but then how it applies and how it actually works out. And obviously some parts of this needing to implement like proof of concepts and test them out to see, because you don't always know beforehand.
Yeah, exactly. So like being the heuristic architect is the pink and fluffy and nice cloud to sit on, but then reality strikes and it sucks.
I didn't realize purist architects had pink fluffy clouds to sit on. I must keep an eye out
to be
for
there
that.
on the pink clouds. I mean, the world is so much easier there. In corners are straight, and black is black, and white is white, and synchronous is synchronous, and so on. I mean, everything works fine there.
That is very true, but unfortunately, life as a reality is sometimes slightly different.
Slightly, yes.
I know of people who specialize in enterprise architecture at a theoretical level. So they talk about what a company needs and the different parts of it, and then they hand it over to the solution architects and practical enterprise architects to actually implement it. They'll come up with the general picture. It's quite interesting sometimes to talk to these people.
I can imagine.
Anyhow, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate your story. Now,
thank you.
Here comes the time where I ask who you would like to nominate to come on the Oops Factor.
Ooh, that's a good one. I saw that in the prep here, but I forgot it. So I would like to, since we're sort of geostationary now, given the Corona COVID thing, we don't move a lot. So I'm staying in Stockholm. I will say a colleague in the sort of, not colleague at my company, but in the Stockholm dynamic area, Benedict Bergman.
So Benedict's been on it.
Damn.
In fact,
so hard.
I'm pretty sure it was Benedict who nominated you.
Oh, now it gets awkward.
No, I think it's a compliment.
Okay. Yeah, probably, yes. So I will quickly find someone. Oh, did you have Joe Griffin?
I haven't had Joe Griffin yet.
Then it's Joe Griffin.
Right. I know Joe. I've been to a couple of his sessions.
I don't want Joe to feel like you're my second choice. You were really my first, but I thought you had already been on the show. I promise.
It's fine. I know Joe. I've been to a couple of his sessions, get along well with him. So yeah, have a drop in line. Brilliant. Well, once again, thank you so much for your time, viewers, especially developers out there who are watching or listening to this. Some valuable lessons about plugins and when you need to design a system. Please feel free to take a look at the rest of the Oops Factor playlist and subscribe to the channel. Have a great day.